Gran Turismo 7 needs bigger lobbies, because if Gran Turismo 7 wants to call itself the real driving simulator, then online racing needs to feel more like real motorsport. More traffic, more pressure, more strategy, more moments where you're not just driving in clean air, but actually thinking your way strategically through a race. And that matters even more now because Gran Turismo 7 is leaning harder into endurance racing more than ever. Hypercars, prototypes, safety cars, the whole game is starting to look superficially like proper modern motorsport, but the lobby sizes still do not match that ambition. And that's exactly why the community keeps coming back to this, because bigger lobbies are not a random wish list from a few people. They would make basically all races feel busier, tougher, more strategic, and more like proper motorsport. Especially now Gran Turismo 7 is adding cars that come from massive grid races like at Le Mans or Daytona. So let's talk about why Gran Turismo 7 needs bigger lobbies and why this could be one of the simplest changes that makes a whole online experience feel dramatically better. So the first thing to say is really simple. 16 cars online or 20 cars in single player just does not feel big enough anymore. It's not that these 16 car races are automatically bad, because you can have great racing in Gran Turismo 7, but when the grid is that small, it's much harder for an event to feel like a proper big race. It can be something a little bit hard to put your finger on, but there's less traffic, less variation, and also less unpredictability. And also online, once a couple of people drop out, the whole thing can start feeling very thin very quickly. For a game that wants clearly to represent real motorsport, the real driving simulator, the scale just uncannily feels off. And also bigger lobbies would make racing feel more like real motorsport that we see on TV, because real motorsport is not just about lap time. When you think about what we discuss in real motorsport, it's about the pressure, it's about traffic, it's about timing, positioning, it's about the ebb and flow of the race, those constant little decisions that you have to make when cars are everywhere doing different things at different paces that comes together, weaves together for the story of the race. With bigger lobbies, races do feel busier and more alive, and you are forced to think more about just driving, like I've said, in clean air, just doing time trial and waiting for the next obvious overtake. That's a huge part of what makes proper racing feel, proper real racing, that's controversial, feel immersive in the first place. And endurance racing, I would say, is where this matters most, because Gran Turismo 7 is leaning harder into the endurance style racing. You've got the hypercars, you've even got a safety car, they've got more of that modern endurance feel creeping into the game. But endurance racing is supposed to be busy, tense, and layered. You just have to watch Le Mans to understand that. It's not just about overtaking cars, it's about surviving traffic over a long period of time, staying consistent over a long period of time, managing pressure over a long period of time, and adapting as the race evolves. And bigger lobbies would really help that side of GT7 feel much more convincing. And I know about this because I've played Gran Turismo 7 for over 1,500 hours. I've run tons of leagues and races and done all sorts of spec races, Formula 1 races, endurance races, tried and done multi-class races. And basically, no matter how good the field is, it just wears thinner and thinner the longer the race goes on. And I don't think that, by the way, that adding more cars would just be chaos. Sometimes people say this, oh, don't add more cars, it'll just be absolute chaos. Won't work on console, maybe iRacing can do it, but it won't work for G7. But bigger lobbies are not just about throwing more cars on the grid to create chaos for the sake of it. More cars means more strategic complexity, more traffic, like I've said, to actually work your way through and think, how am I going to approach this? Am I going to risk an overtake here? I've raced Max Verstappen in iRacing, where I was traffic in a Ford Mustang and he was driving a GT1. I was the traffic, and in trying to overtake me, he crashed. So Max Verstappen uses iRacing as a practice tool to learn how to overtake traffic. And I was racing with him and it didn't quite work, and maybe he learned something, and maybe that's why he's a 4-time world champion now. But you can't do that in Gran Turismo 7. There's less opportunities for the race to kind of twist and turn in ways that a smaller grid simply cannot do. Now, bigger lobbies would also make longer races not only more interesting, but I would say possible as well. A longer race, I'm talking like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, with a small grid can on occasion still be good, but a longer race with a fuller grid is where things undoubtedly start to feel properly special. And that's why the race has a story to it. You're not just driving laps, you're dealing with traffic, seeing strategy unfold, watching gaps move around, trying to stay focused, trying not to make mistakes, and feeling that real sense of achievement when you get to the end. That's why people get so excited by proper endurance style races, because they feel like an actual event rather than just another 15-minute sprint session. Now I want to say a big thank you to today's sponsor, which is GT Omega. And you can see here, that's my GT Omega Inertia bucket seat. One of the most underrated upgrades to your sim rig is getting a bucket seat. Once I got this bucket seat from GT Omega, I didn't want to go back. And I don't think I'm really used or bought or had or taken in a non-bucket seat since. So if you've got a rig already for a couple of years, you're thinking about that next upgrade, you've got a little bit of budget, I strongly recommend considering bucket seats. And obviously you can go to GT Mega, check out their Inertia line there. They've got loads of different colorways, and use my code Kireth5 at discount, which gives you an extra 5% off. Now private lobbies feel this limitation even more, because if you spend time in private lobbies, this point becomes even more obvious. That's where a lot of Gran Turismo's real potential comes alive, because you've got loads of drivers racing there in different cars with specific liveries, with like good clean racing a lot of the time, players trying to build their own championships, league racing happens there, people trying to do endurance events with custom formats. But when you're doing that all with limited lobby sizes, it always feels like there's less room for variety and you're just massively compromised. There's less room to create interesting championships. There's less rooms to actually take your grid around all of the incredible tracks that are in Gran Turismo 7. A lot of them endurance tracks, like Le Mans, like Daytona, like Interlagos. These are great, you know, endurance tracks, but you just can't really take an endurance series around there. And also, if you do, when people quit inevitably, when you have empty spaces, it makes the problem worse, because 16 is just not big enough to begin with. So once you have those inevitable disconnects, people falling way off the pace, not their fault, the race opening up more than you expected, the event starts to lose one of the most important things in racing, which is pressure. When the field is stretched like that, the traffic has disappeared, you're not really racing when on this massive gaps, suddenly what should feel like a proper race feels more like just kind of a waste of time. Because bigger lobbies would solve that. That's a really annoying thing. And it's not even like there needs to be a lot of like clever CPU computation to allow for bigger AI grids. This is online. Like the internet can handle it these days. It's not any more stress on the PlayStation trying to run more AI cars. They should just allow us to run these bigger grid races in online lobbies. And this is maybe one of the most important points, because the community keeps coming back to this again and again and again. It's not a random feature people want, it's a big feature that people need. And I think it's one of the simplest changes that could make Gran Turismo 7 Online feel fuller, more tougher, more strategic, more rewarding. The game used to support 20 cars online in Gran Turismo Sport. Weirdly, we went backward. Surely it cannot be a complicated thing to just allow more cars into lobbies. Now, what would be very controversial is if and when Gran Turismo 8 comes out, they try and release this as like an exclusive feature for Gran Turismo 8. I think that would be very, very, very controversial, because I don't think there's a technical reason why we can't have more than 16 cars, at least in online races or sport mode. And let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to follow me for more, and I'll see you in the next one.